Design is everywhere, and we will discover the design destinations as you've never seen them before. The key places of design in the new series, Design Districts. There is no doubt that the cosmopolitan and outward-looking city of Shanghai, with its long history of international trade and its historic quarters or concessions, allowed to the English, the French, and the Americans in the mid-19th century, is the cultural capital of China in a way that Beijing, with its forbidden city and ancient traditions as the seat of Chinese government for millennia, is not. International influences have always exerted their pull on Shanghai, right from the time of the Silk Road trade routes, and European naval imperialism in the early 19th century made it a strategically important port and hub for the entire Asian region. It was at the end of the First Opium War in 1843 that areas of the city, or concessions, were ceded to the three major maritime Western powers. And although they were not actual possessions, the impact of the West has been a fact of Shanghainese life for nearly 200 years.
And I'm actually fascinated by the history of Shanghai and the imperial history of Shanghai. When I was doing my degree, nobody taught us what a villain England was in imperial history, And the history actually relates to the way that there are American, English and French concessions in Shanghai, particular areas where the English were allowed to build and allowed to live. They're not English possessions like, say, Hong Kong, but they're concessions, so they're still owned by the state. But historically, for nearly 200 years, it's been a melting pot of all sorts of national identities, and that kind of mix of you use the word diversity. I think that really infuses Shanghai as a creative place. I think that there are a lot of very interesting designers, young emerging designers, those hybrid architectural practices that I've talked about, mad architects, Atelier Des House, people like that. So I think the creativity comes from its initial diversity, its kind of excitement. There's a port, you're always trading with the international world, whereas Beijing, as you know, the forbidden city, Beijing was pretty much closed, to foreign visitors until really not very late in the last century, in the 20th century. So you've got that kind of sense of excitement going on in Shanghai. I think everybody would agree with that, people that I know who work there.
People in Shanghai are increasingly seeing design as a cultural endeavor as well, and one that really, of course, plays into their identity, but also offers new channels for thinking about the world that we all inhabit, thinking about our relationship with it and to each other, and also thinking about the meanings that are embedded in design and what it says about us as individuals and as societies, and frankly as a species as well.
Museums, galleries, and shops of interest to the visually creative abound throughout the city, with its astonishing skyline of skyscrapers such as the 632-meter Shanghai Tower, or the Oriental Pearl TV Tower along the Bund, the built-up bank of the Huangpu River in the center of the city near the site of the 2010 World Expo. The buildings come alive at night in the most spectacular way, each one of them generating a different light show visible from far and wide.
Yeah, people in Shanghai really enjoy their lifestyles. It's a massive city of 25 million people, and yet when you're here, it's really broken up into a series of very distinct neighborhoods and districts. It's a city where you can and people do and enjoy walking. It's a city where people really care about their environment, and that applies to the architecture, the public space, as well as interiors. It's a place where where you work hard, but you also play hard. But when you play, you want to play somewhere where you feel comfortable and where you feel good about playing.
Designers and creatives will flock to Xintiandi, a pedestrianized section of the city in the French concession and one of the first urban regeneration projects in China. Full to the brim with bars, restaurants, galleries and bookshops, it has preserved the traditional shukumen, the stone-gated houses on narrow alleys, inviting visitors to explore and consume. The Xintiandi Design Festival, normally held in March, is a satellite project of Design Shanghai, the design exhibition that since 2014 has become the biggest annual destination for China's burgeoning design industry. The 60,000 visitors over 4 days demonstrate that it is not just design professionals who have a thirst for elegant, contemporary products and interiors.
So the connection between Design Shanghai and the city, how have they been built throughout the year, and what can be improved? Since 2015, we established Design Shanghai at Xintiandi Design Festival. It's a location in the heart of Shanghai, where most of the tourists and the local people will hang out for food and drink and shopping. So it's a very popular destination. The reason we choose Xintiandi is because the nature of Design Shanghai should attract people from all over the world and all over China. When they visit Design Shanghai and visited the city, they want to also enjoy a little bit life after you spend the whole day in the exhibition center. So we want to pick a location where people can go after work, have the best restaurant, bars and cafes, and also see a little bit of Shanghai. Because we are a design show and then we work with the design community, so not only we want to bring people to a nice place for relax, but we also want to combine the local design community to do some design related installations, content and educational stuff in the city. So this is where everything starts. So we work with the property developer who is the owner behind Xintiandi. So we coming together and we planned every year a very interesting topic, and to create more than 20 installations, a couple of design talks, workshop in the city. So it becoming the design festival, and it will last longer than the 4 days show. Actually, it lasts for 2 weeks. So during the Design Shanghai show, our visitors can go to the city to engage with all these installations and enjoy their life in the city. But at the same time, don't forget the Shanghai public, because I think maybe partly thanks for Design Shanghai, the local Shanghai public have developed their understanding in design. They actually quite interesting to see all these elements. And all these installations are very child-friendly, interactive, so the kids will climb up to an installation and some of them need you to take action. It worked very well and bring design to normal public's life, because I think for you guys in Italy, design is in your DNA. You grow up with design, you have all the architects, all the museum. It's very sophisticated culture, but in China, for a lot of people, even for cities like Shanghai, design is something they don't really understand. They understand art, because with all these years paintings, they understand art, but some of them, they don't really understand the difference between design and art. So by bringing design to the city and educate the public what is design and what your life can be related to design, is the whole purpose of the Xintiandi Design Festival.
And I'll tell you a little story about the very first Design Shanghai we ever did in 2014. That was at the SEC, the Shanghai Exhibition Center, this kind of Russian building. It's basically a trade show, Design Shanghai, but they thought they would have, or the organizers, we thought we would have one day for the public. And the morning, that Saturday morning, there's a very big courtyard in front of that building. I don't know whether you know it. And the people queuing in that courtyard, they went round and round and round. There must have been 10,000 people in that courtyard just queuing. And there's these great big doors. You go up steps and these great big doors like a fortress or something. And there were too many people in the show. So they had to close these doors and people were hammering on them and pushing over them. It was like nearly a riot, just to get into a design show. And I think just that shows us how much hunger there is for consumers to not only to acquire, good things, beautiful things, well-made things, but also to feel that they're joining a world of prosperity and joining a world where what you have in your living room and what you have on your walls is actually important and you can make choices about it. And that's very new for Chinese culture overall. And I think that the Chinese design industry generally is responding incredibly well to that. And as I say, over the years that I've been doing the project, seeing it become more and more a leader.
Similarly, arguably the most famous design exhibition in the world, Milan's Salone del Mobile, or Furniture Fair, also comes to Shanghai in late autumn.
Sono 5 anni che abbiamo iniziato a essere presenti con un salone del mobile che tra l'altro è una chicca a Shanghai, con tutte le migliori aziende, è proprio una vetrina importantissima con le migliori aziende, e questo ha dato anche i suoi frutti perché nel frattempo in questi anni l'esportazione delle aziende italiane nel mercato del cinese è cresciuta sensibilmente. È un paese enorme, ha ancora dei grandissimi margini di crescita, quindi per noi rimane un momento strategico. Quindi sicuramente continueremo nella nostra presenza a Shanghai per i prossimi anni e io credo che ci sono tutte le possibilità di riuscire a fare sempre bene per noi, per le nostre aziende, per aumentare ulteriormente le esportazioni. È chiaro che questo è un anno un po' particolare e purtroppo ci siamo dovuti fermare, vedremo cosa succederà nei prossimi mesi. Mi auguro che quanto prima tutto possa tornare alla normalità e quindi che noi possiamo riprendere tranquillamente a Milano, come a Shanghai, come a Mosca, anche se questi mesi ci siamo dovuti fermare, ma il salone non si ferma.
Fine art has as much hold on the city as contemporary design, with a collection of art fairs and events throughout the year. The Art 021 Shanghai Contemporary Art Fair is held in November, as is the Westbund Art and Design Fair. The Shanghai International Arts Festival, held slightly earlier in October, brings together a vast array of traditional and contemporary arts and culture, with dance, music, and drama performances, and a conference. Hotels and galleries mix in this vibrant city, the best example being perhaps the One Home Art Hotel in Zhangjiang Science City, which boasts more than 1,000 works by 121 contemporary artists, such as Damien Hirst, Yayoi Kusama, and Marcus Lupetz. Right next door is the Hao Museum of Art, and then visitors should not miss the Power Station for Art, a regenerated power station on the West Bund, which is the first state-run museum in China to focus on contemporary art. The M50 Art Complex near the banks of the Suzhou Creek is a warren of studios, galleries, cafes, and boutiques which have emerged in the Chongming slub mill's defunct warehouses where textiles were once the main industry.
For me, what's really fascinating about Shanghai and encouraging about Shanghai is the way in which we think about architecture, buildings as objects and places, but increasingly as we think about the city and architecture influences the city. So for me, some of the best architecture in Shanghai is the redevelopment of the Huangpu riverfront, which is this incredibly extensive project that is really transforming the city's public spaces and relationship with the water. The subway is actually quite incredible, but then there are, of course, beautiful buildings too. Works by Shanghai architects like Philip Yuan of Arca Union, or Neri and Hu, Lyndon Neri and Rosanna Hu of Neri and Hu, Atelier Deshouse with their Long Museum, and many others. And of course, Shanghai is still a very open place for architects from abroad. You have the Fosun Museum by Thomas Heatherwick, works by Jean Nouvel coming up, Norman Foster, et cetera, and so it's a very dynamic and exciting place architecturally, but also urbanistically.
Shops, cafes, restaurants, and bars are too numerous to mention. But to pick just a couple most worthy of attention, Design Republic on Jianying Road in the French Concession, the retail offshoot of famed Shanghai architectural consultancy Neri and Hu. Lyndon Neri and Rosanna Hu, Shanghai natives but with a Western education, have perhaps done more as single individuals than anyone to cement Shanghai's reputation as the design destination of the East. Design Republic carries many famous international designer brands, but, as Neri and Hu will tell you, the native Chinese design industry is now standing at the forefront of global design. Its younger or emerging generation is as imaginative and ingenious with advanced technologies as it is respectful and engaged with China's ancient aesthetic traditions.
But a list of people like Joyce Wang, Steve Leung, Neri and Hu are probably the best known architects in Shanghai. They're working all over the world. They're in the UK, Italy, Spain, Australia, Sweden, the Philippines. There's a lady called Liang Shi, whose consultancy is X Living, who does these beautiful bookshops, unbelievable, just, like temples to reading. And I would love to see that kind of thing in the West. I'm not sure that bookstores particularly would find the kind of budgets for it, but clearly there's a huge tradition, a huge culture of literacy and of reading books, in China that Liang Shi responds to. There are some really influential people from China all over the world. Tony Chi, for instance, based in New York. Chi Wing Lo, who has been working in Italy for a generation now, for like 20 years. So I don't think there's any doubt at all that that the interaction between we can call them Chinese or Asian or even just Eastern designers and design aesthetics and the West are beginning to come together and meld together in a way that we haven't seen before. But there's absolutely no doubt that the richness of imagination and particularly their heritage, as I say, I come back to this point, that the young ones, they really want to push the boundaries of technology, but at the same time they have immense respect and sensitivity to their own traditions, and to not only their own traditions of materials and processes and techniques, but the traditions of mindfulness, that go with that kind of work. And that is also something that means a great thing to me. I've done meditation things all my life. I've got a book proposal about mindful design. And so it's another reason why I find it so fascinating and enjoyable working in China.
Yeah. Currently, the creative force in Shanghai break into 5 categories. Industrial design, which is quite big. Architecture and the interior design, which is a small portion, but they grow. about 5 to 10% every year. Fashion design, surprisingly, is quite a small portion compared with the whole population. But the biggest portion, surprisingly, is internet service related to design. That's quite interesting. And then you have software and computer design service. I give you a figure. For example, if you look at every year by billion RMB of turnover, the internet service related design is over 61 billion RMB a year turnover, and the architecture design and interior design is 40 billion RMB yuan per year. And fashion design is actually very small, but fashion design in China is quite advanced. I think even globally, Chinese fashion design has been recognized quite well. But fashion design in China currently in Shanghai is only take 12 billion RMB. I guess maybe all the fashion studios and designers are quite small scale. It's not like other big industry attached the design service. China is very advanced in social media, online shopping, e-commerce is huge in China. And I think that possibly is the reason why internet service related to design industry is so big. So that's potentially will give you, I think it's a picture of how the design community form up in China. And then looking at the industry design sector, you have the car design industry and white goods design. And then also, I think small consumer product has a huge industry as well. But I think one trend which reflect to my industry is the architecture and the interior design is growing year on year, which is very encouraging. I think the COVID-19 is an unfortunate crisis globally, but when people is being locked down at home, they look at their living space. Actually, I don't know what happened in Europe, but in China recently, people are more conscious about where they're living at the home, and look at to refurbish their apartment. And if you do have an outdoor space, try to make it into a garden, because have a little bit of outdoor space is such a luxury now, especially during this crisis. So there is a small peak in China recently for home market. By all the design studio I've been talking to, their business is not affected actually. Actually, some of them picking up.
Exciting.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to choose one word to describe Shanghai, it would be dynamic.
Unique.